Everything's okay. Now we are in live, okay? Just a minute. Olá para todos, boa tarde, bem-vindos e bem-vindas à Quinta Flua. Hoje vamos conversar com o poeta Femi Morgan, da Nigéria, e eu vou, primeiramente, introduzi-lo a vocês. Então, Femi Morgan é um escritor, jornalista, consultor de mídia e curador de arte. Ele é autor de 5 livros de poesia, incluindo Renegade, uma tradução para português seria Desertor, de 2019, The Year of Fire, O Ano do Fogo, de 2020. Ele foi finalista do prêmio Glena Lushey, na categoria Poesia Africana, finalista do prêmio Pius Ademtsami Memorial Book, em 2019, e do prêmio da Fundação Babiche Niue. O veredito do prêmio Glena Lynch descreveu o livro The Year of Fire, O Ano do Fogo, como um livro incomum e surpreendente que revela uma busca pelo self, país, nação, liberdade e ativismo político, por uma determinação própria e amor sem traços artificiais, contra um pano de fundo esquecido e quase apagado de partes de Lagos, a mais caótica das cidades. Uma forte revelação. O livro Renegade foi apresentado através de uma performance no Festival de Livros e Artes de Lagos, de 2019, e no projeto da comunidade E.N.S. Book, da Universidade de Legon, Gana. Morgan obteve mestrado em estudos diaspóricos do Instituto de Estudos Africanos na Universidade de Ibadan, no estado de Oyo, na Nigéria, um certificado de direitos do autor de Harvard e possui bacharelado pela Universidade Obafemi Oloolo em Ife-Ife, no estado de Usun, Nigéria. É casado com uma chefe de cozinha e vive na Orla de Lagos. Welcome, Morgan.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, now I have a double working here. I will translate what you're saying, and at the same time, I will ask the questions, okay?
Yeah, no problem. Okay. No problem.
So, thank you so much for this opportunity. And my first question is a general question. How long have you been writing poetry? Yes, and how did you start this interest on literature and poetry in general? Então, quando você começou a escrever poesia e como começou o teu interesse sobre literatura?
So basically, I've been writing poetry for a long time. I started, and this is the first time I'll be saying it publicly. I started writing poetry in lieu of writing a song. I wanted to sing at a time in my life, and but around that time was when I encountered a Nigerian poet called Ni Oshundari, and it was Ni Oshundari, poet laureate Ni Oshundari.
Ni Oshundari.
Yeah,
okay.
Ni Oshundari, and Oshundari's poetry sort of redirected what I was doing with my writing, because I've always.
Então, por enquanto que a internet dele caiu um pouquinho, eu vou falar. Então, ele começou a escrever poesia, na verdade, não para ser poeta, mas para ser cantor. Então, ele começou a escrever poesia para cantar. E ele começou a se interessar por poesia através de um poeta nigeriano aclamado chamado Ni Oshundari. Né? Depois vamos escrever esses nomes que são nomes africanos, né, de línguas da Nigéria, que são mais complicadinhos de escrever mesmo, mas depois passaremos todos esses detalhes. Vamos ver se o Morgan volta. Espera só um minutinho. Eu acho que ele caiu. Bom, por enquanto que ele caiu, eu gostaria de ler um poema dele, que, na verdade, eu acabei traduzindo alguns poemas e seria interessante... Hello, now that's okay. That's
Good.
okay.
So let me just hit it off. So Oshundari, the poet laureate Oshundari, influenced and redirected my writing, because I've always been fascinated about writing. I've always had an introverted outlook at life as a child, and then I've always read newspapers. My father happened to be someone who would, hand me a newspaper and say, "Do me a summary of some of the stories." So naturally, I was into books before I even thought about writing. And
Então,
when I
just a minute for me. I will translate,
yeah,
okay? In parts,
yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Então, ele começou a ler este poeta, e o pai dele também contava histórias, diversas histórias. E ele teve acesso aos livros através desse poeta, também através do pai. Continue.
So, but unlike Oshundari, I do not come from an idyllic landscape. I do not come from a place of a place full of nature, of trees and flowers and and birds. I do not come from all the villages. I do not come from the villages. I come from Lagos, and all my life have lived in central cities, where you have brick and mortar, where you have cities where you have smoke, where you have environmental degradation and all of that. So my reality of the world is not the reality of Oshundari. So what I basically learned, what I basically learned from Oshundari was the discovery of philosophy, discovery of verse. Of course, eventually I read the West African verse. Eventually I read Okigbo. Eventually I read Shoyinka. But for me, Oshundari was that spark that opened up possibilities for me, and that is how I started writing, even before I got into the university. Yeah.
Ok. Então, ele disse que com a poesia de Shundari, na verdade, é uma poesia idílica e que tem uma paisagem, tem flores, tem pássaros, etc. Só que ele sempre morou nas grandes cidades, ele sempre viveu na cidade de Lagos, e que a poesia dele chamava atenção. Toda a filosofia de poesia ele aprendeu com esse poeta, a construir versos, a filosofia de imagens, de poesia, foi através dele. Ok? So, let's read a poem. Ok?
Let me start with the one you are not familiar with before we go to the ones that you are familiar with.
Yes, Femi, I've translated some poems. So, for example, I translate to listening. Let's read it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank God the light is back, so it's easy for me to, navigate now.
Yes, don't worry. Let's see. You don't have the physical book, yeah?
Yeah, I don't have the physical book here.
No, okay, don't worry. Então, I will read and I will read the
yeah, okay,
translation.
Please, yeah.
Okay. Então, vamos ler a tradução do poema Listen, escute. Para a voz das nuvens que emana eco, grávida, balançou pelo vento. Escute as balidas cabras, satisfeitas com seus destinos, sem agonias com a natureza plena. As árvores sóbrias, acariciadas pelo vento, firmes no sol, acolhendo os insetos em seus ventres, remoendo suas feridas pelo silêncio em mim. Escute e tentar esquecer de ti mesmo. Você é nada. Tua voz é um privilégio perdido em ti. Teu tato é rumor. Nunca te acalmarás. Tuas feridas guardam o incidente. Você é nada. Tua voz é um privilégio perdido em ti. Teu tato é rumor. Nunca te acalmarás. Tuas feridas guardam o incidente. Será grato pela vida. Ázimo, obstinado entre os dentes. Yeah, okay. In English, listen to the voice of the clouds, that streaming echo, pregnant, swayed by the winds, Listen to the bleating of goats satisfied with their fates, anxious not of proud natures. Listen to temperate trees, founded by the wind, firm in the sun, housing the insect they are growing, mending their wounds by the silence of time. Listen and try to forget about yourself. You are nothing. Your voice is a privilege lost in you. Your tact is gentle. You will never be calm. Your wounds will memorize the incident. You'll be thankful for life and living it and yielded to the winds. Okay? So in this poem, we have a lot of nature too. You said that you live in a city, in a big city, yes, in a urban area. But at the same time, in your poems, you
Samuel,
speak.
desculpa
Ah,
interromper. Tá dando uma microfonia, então quando um falar é bom o outro desligar o microfone. Eu acho que é por causa
okay,
disso. Tá dando
okay,
uma microfoniazinha, desculpa.
okay. So let's see.
Thank you.
Because you are having some echo, Femi. I think that you need to turn off your microphone because you have
Okay.
some echo. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay. So I will ask you, and you turn on the microphone to answer. Okay. So we have in some poems in Renegade we have a lot of nature, but at the same time this kind of nature it's the same time it reveals something human on it. Yes, então tem muita natureza nos poemas e ao mesmo tempo revelam algo de muito humano nessa natureza. So it's very interesting. And how is your relation with nature? Então como é a sua relação com a natureza? You need to turn on the microphone, please.
So for me, nature is like the primal landscape, and like Oshundare, the idea of intrusion is and modernity is a shock on nature, and nature would always try to reassert itself. I've been privileged to live also in places like Ile-Ife, in places like Ibadan that are not too, I can't call them not too cosmopolitan, but they are not too hard and difficult like the Lagos landscape. And that gives me the privilege to compare realities, to compare cultural dimensions, to compare philosophy. Because in Lagos, it's all about how to make the money, how to hit the money, how to bring the bag home, But you go to places like Osun State, everybody's relaxed under the tree, drinking palm wine, you take your mind off, you look at the goats bleating, you look at the sun, the expression is different because their realities are different, and you realize that your difficult cosmopolitan life is not the only life that is available. It's not the only life that is lived. And you have more access to what you call the leases of life, does not mean that the next person does not appreciate the simple, the idyllic, the freshness of life on the other side of the divide. Of course, the realities of village life could also be difficult, but when you take a look at how pollution and struggle for financial freedom overshadows your primal instinct for meditation, for peace, for friendship, for companionship, it brings out not just a poem but a story. Yeah.
ok? Então, ele fala da relação a relação com a natureza, né? Primeiramente, ele aprende essa questão da natureza através da literatura nigeriana, principalmente com a questão da paisagem. Então, na poesia dele, quando retrata a natureza, a paisagem é muito importante, justamente porque ele se interessa nessa questão da natureza e como a natureza tenta se reconstruir na modernidade. E ele se interessa muito por esse contraste entre esse mundo cosmopolita, que ele sempre cresceu, no caso de Lagos, né? E essa questão também de que na cidade sempre tem essa questão das pessoas ganharem dinheiro, das pessoas correrem atrás de trabalho, etc. E, ao mesmo tempo, esse contraste com a natureza. Só que, ao mesmo tempo, esse aspecto humano da natureza provém também de um certo sofrimento humano, porque, na realidade, nas pequenas vilas que estão mais conectadas com a natureza, também há um sofrimento. E, ao mesmo tempo, ao contrário do mundo cosmopolita, nesses lugares é possível você meditar, é possível você fazer outras coisas, ter um outro tipo de vida. Né? Então, ele gosta muito de fazer esses contrastes. Ok, Morgan? I'm doing a double working here.
Well, you know what I want to do? I want to get the poem, the digital copy of the poem, so that I could read and ease you of some of the burden of translating and engaging at the same time.
Okay.
So I will do that. I will do that. So let's go to the questions first, and then by the time we get to that point, I would have been able to produce, I would have been able to bring out the digital copy.
Ok. Então a gente vai primeiro fazer as perguntas e depois nós leremos os poemas.
Ask me the questions. Yeah.
Okay. Did you write 5 books of poetry? And then the relationship between language and social, political issues. You have a lot of political issues in your poems too.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. So these relations are common in the Nigerian literature. How do you see these relations today? Because in the past, então, I will translate the question first, okay? Então, nos livros dele, nos poemas dele, tem uma relação muito grande entre a linguagem e as questões político-sociais. E é muito comum na história da literatura nigeriana essa relação ser tensa, né? Como você vê essa relação? Because I was reading about Nigerian literature, and you have 2 military dictatorship, yeah? Yes, it's in 60 to 79, and you have the Civil War during the 70, and then we have another dictatorship until 1999, yes? Então, eles tiveram uma ditadura de 66 a 79, uma de 67 a 70, e depois uma outra ditadura até 1999. So, what's the tensions between poetry and the politics? And
politics is the vehicle for development and underdevelopment, really, and as much as we try to shy away from politics, as what you could call the plebeians try to shy away from politics, the middle class tries to shy away from politics. As much as we try to shy away from politics is what defines our lives, because when the Senate passes a law and it's being implemented, we all feel the brunt of the law. And the guiding principle and the culture of the political class defines how we subvert or abide by what the ground norm is. So for me, politics is important, and I can tell you boldly that Nigeria is not having even a good lease of democracy. People are asking the questions: is this liberal democracy working? Can we go back to the regional parliamentary process of the 1960s, where we had the northern region, the eastern region, the western region, and when all those regions were heavily competitive in terms of development, in terms of education, in terms of agriculture, in terms of general well-being, the leaders, as much as they had their own issues, Awolowo was invested in Obafemi Awolowo was invested. That's the premier of the Western region, was invested in transforming the Western region so much that we had a television station before Romania, before Bulgaria. We had an agricultural plan. There was free education for everyone, primary, secondary school, free education with free books. And that generation, when they tell my generation of a reality of a responsible government, it looks like a mirage, because I was born at a time when the military was ruling. It was a time of silence, a time of tyranny, a time of oppression, a time of whispers, a time where you did not have any rights to say your mind. And if you say your mind too much, you were going to be incarcerated. So if you ask me what's the difference between now and then, I would say the only difference is freedom of speech. Outside freedom of speech, people are still poor. Nigeria is 63%. Nigeria has 63% poor people. 63% out of 100. 63%. 54% of Nigerian youths are unemployed. 54. And so as a poet, I ask myself, if you want me to write poetry about flowers, about beautiful damsel, about Holy Mary, Holy Grail, it'd be difficult for me, because my reality and the reality of my people is the reality of anguish, of pain, of oppression, and I must reflect that in the reality as a poet. That's I think that's the answer between politics and literature. If our politics improves and begins to give us, a lease of life, and the people begin to feel that they have true governance, then the literature would also morph into a literature that does not talk about poverty, does not talk about dark imageries and all of that. But Nigeria is perpetually, Nigeria conflicts between a population that is a population that almost 90% of Nigeria's population, are either in the displaced middle class or are very poor. So the reality as a poet is for me to reflect, the angst in that society.
Atenção entre a política e a poesia, né? E sempre houve essa tensão. Durante o período militar, inclusive, teve muita censura, até mais ou menos, né, 1999, houve uma censura muito grande, inclusive, que mais ou menos no final da fala ele diz que que a diferença entre o passado e hoje é que há mais liberdade de expressão do que algumas décadas atrás, mas que realmente como poeta, é necessário prestar muita atenção nessas questões, porque ele mesmo se questiona como poeta, se falar de flores ou se falar de paisagens também, não quebraria o compromisso social. Então, o que acontece? Na realidade, é necessário falar dessa realidade, porque imaginem que 45% dos nigerianos estão desempregados, então é muita coisa, né? Muitas pessoas realmente estão em estado de vulnerabilidade social. Então, o que acontece? O que o poeta pode fazer em relação a isso? Né? A não ser falar e denunciar essa realidade, né? Já que hoje existe uma liberdade de expressão maior do que há anos atrás. Hoje não tem mais a censura, né? Então, para ele é muito importante. So, including, you have a lot of poems that, for example, I have a question about the city in your poems, because, for example, you have the Go Slow or Dakar. Yes, two poems, for example, that we have the city the city and the politics at the same time. So the city is an important image in your poetry. Poems like Go Slow or Dakar show the cities and the places, and at the same time you have some kind of a conflict, So why the city? Why you represent the city in your poems, and what's the conflict,
So the thing is that, in cosmopolitan discourse, the idea is to create a competitive city, a city that can equate itself with other cities in the world. And what that means is that in terms of infrastructure, in terms of well-being, in terms of light, electricity, and all of that, thankfully, we are talking about the city. When we started this project, the lights in Lagos, Nigeria went off, and the lights in Sao Paulo, Brazil is constant. It's more constant than here. That is another reality. And so my writing of the most prominent Nigerian city, which is Lagos, has always been a constant feature of my writing, because Lagos is a hotbed, a center point of all the ethnic groups in the country. There's hardly any ethnic group in Nigeria that you will not find in Lagos. There is the migration rate to Lagos is like the migration rate to New York, to the major center cities, New York, Rio de Janeiro, So if there is not lease of life in the city, then you can equate that to the challenges that you will find in other states. A poem like Go Slow, for example, is a poem about traffic, about huge traffic. And traffic is not a peculiarity of the Nigerian state. If you go to states like India, you will find that traffic is terrible in New Delhi. I'm not sure of Brazil. I've not been to Brazil before, but I'm sure that there will be places in Brazil where traffic is terrible, and if you want to go there, you will have to plan your day. But in Lagos, the traffic has its own peculiar cultural coloration, and that was what I was trying to dig out from the poem, exploring the Lagos traffic and exploring its nuances. It will take a critic or a poet to see whether I've achieved that, but that was what I was trying to achieve. Explore the cosmopolitan nature of Lagos, explore its nuances, and also why the city. The city is, like I said, the city is the motif. the city is the motif for weighing the quality of life of the citizen. The citizen, okay, if you say I'm a Lagos boy to someone who lives far into the hinterlands, the assumption is that you are living a better life with roads, water, electricity, and the assumption is that you have access to wealth, you have access to relationships, you have access to better infrastructure, so that is why the city is that measuring standard for the lease of life, and which I hope that I had explored in the point. Yeah.
E, na realidade, ele escreve sobre as cidades justamente para combater um discurso cosmopolita, né? Esse discurso cosmopolita, por exemplo, diz que existe uma certa qualidade de vida nas cidades, o que de fato pode ser até questionável, né? E o poema Go Slow, que mais para frente vamos ler, Vá Devagar na tradução, na realidade um poema sobre o trânsito e como que o trânsito ele também representa diversas coisas, principalmente não somente questões humanas, né? Not only human questions in the poem, mas também sobre a questão da vida nas cidades, né? Então, por exemplo, uma pessoa que sai do interior da Nigéria e vai para Lagos procura sempre uma vida melhor. Então, procura, por exemplo, eletricidade, coisas que a cidade pode oferecer, né? Então, e a cidade como estrutura de qualidade de vida. Porém, nem sempre isso ocorre, né? Então, de certa forma, ele também questiona muito sobre o que a estrutura da cidade pode oferecer em relação às pessoas. E também porque o trânsito da Nigéria ele tem uma espécie de coloração. Se vocês, por exemplo, se vocês compararem com a Índia, por exemplo, ou até mesmo com qualquer outra parte do mundo, como Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, enfim, Nova York, dá para perceber que o trânsito funciona de forma diferente, justamente porque reflete aspectos de paisagem, de cultura do local. Então, na poesia dele, ele coloca muito essa questão da cidade, justamente para poder abordar sobre estes temas. Ok? So it was a kind of a free translation because it was a lot of information, but that's okay. No, your microphone.
I have the book now, so I could read from here. So yeah.
Let's finish the questions.
Okay.
And then you read the poems, okay?
Yeah.
So I have another question. The questions about the poetry always appears on your writing. Okay, so for example, there is a poem in here, just a minute, that's talking a good poet, for example, and you have another examples on your book. Okay. Do you think that we need to rethink the function of poetry today? Então, na sua escrita aparece muito também a questão da própria poesia. Você acredita que precisamos repensar a função da poesia hoje?
So, do I think that we should rethink the function of poetry? For me, I think that poetry was deliberately structured to be fluid, and the reason why I think that is because as an African, I know that oratory and the Ifa couples and the proverbs in our languages were all poetry. And so many people have encountered poetry without taking cognizance of poetry, of language use, of oratory, of proverbs. Um, and poetry is that um, is that special attention to language. Special attention to language, special attention to meaning, special attention to meaning making. And it used to be an exclusive preserve, and now people say, what's the form? How do we sort of refunction poetry? I think that poetry has already, you know, poetry has its place already. And why we find it a bit difficult is because we are trying to formalize poetry. We are trying to um, we are trying to, like blacksmiths, we are trying to create new 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 avenues to pitch poetry. Just like you would say spoken word poets, you would say you would want to use poetry to earn a living. So that on the side. The second side of the idea of function of poetry is the idea of whether poetry should be didactic, whether I should teach a lesson, whether I should be philosophic, or whether it should just, you know, be bland and, just say your mind kind of poetry. For me, I do not want to argue because it's an academic question. What I would say is that as an African, the function of poetry for me is to preserve the narrations of the age. What I mean by that is that my role is to look at my society, my this era in which I live, and sort of etch it in time that the other generations can understand what this era looked like. That's one. The second is to look at the social, political, and economic landscape of my people, and in a way, maybe by showing or by speaking or by writing, quietly or boldly demand for change, social change. Um, and that is in tradition what a lot of Nigerian poets have done for many years, using their poetry to advocate. So there are a lot of political poets in Nigeria. Um, but as time goes, as time as as we have evolved as poets, I've also found that there are a lot of Nigerian poets who are also now moving away from the political, moving away from the um, poetry of advocacy, and they are now exploring poetry of um, what I could call avant-garde poetry. That is not bad in itself. you know Poetry can live by side, but as a poet one must define what one wants to stand by, and what one wants to you know explore, as a poet. And for me, poetry is supposed to speak to the people, speak for the people, you know and stand with the people. And for me, that defines how poetry functions for me. you know for other poets, poetry may not function that way, you know but I know that how what I just said can be can because poetry is importantly tradition. Poetry is tradition. It's not prose, it's tradition. If you look at what Okigbo has done, with Thunder, which is one of his famous poem called Thunder. You see, if you look at what Oshoyinka has done, if you look at what Oshundari has done with with his couples of poems on politics, on growth, you can easily understand why, poetry on the Civil War still exists. Poetry on incarceration of Nigerian poets and writers and advocates still exists. Poetry on, the poverty, the oppression, and even within all of that, poetry on the beauty of coexistence, the beauty of subversion, also exists within very hard landscapes. You'll be doing translation, so let me calm down. You'll be doing translation, so let me take it easy on you.
Yeah, I need to translate all the things. Então, ele diz que na verdade, a poesia, o conceito de poesia dele é que a poesia precisa ser fluida, né? Então, por exemplo, a utilização de uma linguagem de acordo com as imagens, os provérbios, né? Então, para ele, a poesia tem que ter realmente uma atenção muito especial para a linguagem, né? E a função dela, na verdade, seria justamente não somente representar alguma coisa, mas também falar pelas pessoas. Então tá sempre, ele utiliza até um termo muito bonito, né? Então, a poesia cria novas avenidas para se chegar a ela mesma, né? E ele não acredita numa poesia acadêmica, didática, né, filosófica, não. Ele não quer esse tipo de poesia. E como africano ele se questiona também, ou seja, a relação. Então, como africano ele precisa ver a poesia como relações éticas com a sociedade e especialmente com as questões econômicas e sociais. E essa poesia ela também clama por mudanças sociais, né? Então nós temos aqui, então essa poesia está sempre questionando essas questões. Hoje na poesia nigeriana, especialmente, nós temos uma poesia que é escrita através de uma linguagem que está se voltando um pouco com a questão de uma linguagem mais de vanguarda, né? Mas só que ao mesmo tempo ele não vê problema nisso, só que para ele a poesia começa pelas pessoas e fala pelas pessoas. Então, porque a poesia é tradição, então a tradição está no povo e nas pessoas, então portanto deve falar por elas. E ele fala de toda uma tradição da poesia nigeriana, né? Depois eu vou até citar aqui alguns nomes, que foram encarcerados durante a Guerra Civil, e ao mesmo que escreveram uma poesia política muito forte, de um compromisso social muito forte, só que também existe nessa produção uma poesia que está ligada à beleza da coexistência. Então, a coexistência, a questão da beleza, da paisagem e a questão da coexistência, né? Ela não está desligada de uma poesia de compromisso social, muito pelo contrário, ela está ligada, justamente, ela na verdade, não é algo à parte, ela está junto, ok? So, let's see, I have a last question, okay? Which authors should you recommend to Brazilian public to know more about Nigerian literature? We have a lot of things in common to share, but at the same time we don't have a lot of translations. Então nós não temos muitas traduções. O Wole Soyinka, one example that's very famous in here. Então o Wole Soyinka, por exemplo, que ele é muito famoso aqui, and Chinua Achebe, yeah, também he's very famous here, então ele é muito famoso aqui, mas poesia é pouquíssimo traduzida. So, but you don't have a lot of poetry translation here. So, which authors do you recommend? Your microphone.
There's a lot of there are a lot of poets in Nigeria. There's a saying that if you throw a stone into Ibadan, it will into Ibadan households, it will meet one poet. I dare say that there are a lot of poets in Nigeria on a general scale of 1 to 10. But there are poets that have distinguished themselves that I feel that, beyond of course, political poems are important, but beyond the political poems, there are also people who have explored culture, nature, geography, um, meaning, people who have deployed words in ways that are out of this world, poets that I respect on a personal level, and some of them whom I have also engaged. So I would just probably give you 5 or 6. So the first poet I would like to, the Brazilian public to engage is Tade Padiola. He's the author of the Sahara Testament. He won the Delphic Laurel Prize, and he's also the 2003 um, Nigeria Prize for Literature winner. Tade is a lawyer in Ibadan, Nigeria, and he's a prolific poet, with 4 books to his kitty. Um, but his most prominent book is the Sahara Testament, which is a book that not just explores the Sahara, but explores the people of the Sahara, the history of the Sahara, and it is poetry. And it is poetry with cadence, poetry with a sense of music, or poetry that is metrical in nature. Um, Another person is Niran Okewole. Niran is a neuropsychiatrist. Uh, Niran is a neuropsychiatrist, and at the moment he's on fellowship with Oxford in the UK, and he's a prolific Nigerian poet and a dramatist. If I would go to the north of Nigeria, one of the poets that I have a great respect for is Abubakar Sidi. His name is Abubakar Sidi, Abubakar Sidi, Side. Abubakar Sidi is a Nigerian naval officer. He's a Nigerian naval officer, but most importantly, he's a poet who's written 2 books of poetry. His work is steeped in um, what you call Sufism, and with Sufism, he's been able to create codexes that are both political, social, and economic. And because he's a naval officer, it will take the wise, and it will take the brilliant to unearth, some of those political nuances, while those who are uninitiated can just enjoy, you know, beauty, enjoy mysticism, and enjoy imagery. Um, you know, uh, our friends from the East, one poet that um, is also has also proven his mettle is Chijoke Amunadi. Chijoke Amunadi is uh, is the only Nigerian that has won the Glenn Lucia Prize. You know, I've been shortlisted. Another friend of mine has been shortlisted. But Amunadi's poem, and he's also a finalist of the Nigeria Prize for Literature, one of the biggest prize, $100,000 prize. Um, Amunadi has 6 books, and he's also exploring poetry and music at the moment, working with younger minstrels, violinists, doing a lot, with poetry. And unlike someone like me, Amunadi is inspired by Pablo Neruda. And his work, evolves daily around love, around erotic love, around inspirational love, But most importantly, his verse is that which I have come to see brilliance in, And I have his books. I've digested his books, but I will never write about the things that he writes about. I've mentioned four, right? Yes, I've mentioned four. The fifth poet that comes to mind easily is a poet called Romeo Oriogun. Romeo Oriogun is much younger than I am, but in terms of verse, I think that he's got it, and I have great respect for him. He's at the moment in the US. In the US, I think he should be doing his PhD at the moment in creative writing, and obviously he's going to teach creative writing. So Romeo Oriogun is a prolific poet. He's a poet laureate, and he's a young poet laureate who, apart from the fact that he has liberties to explore, he sort of has liberties to explore transgender vehicles. Most importantly, to be sentimental. Most importantly, Romeo tilts his poetry more towards the American, or what I would call the post-American writing, the kind of writing that many of the old Nigerian critics still would not stand with. But for me, I'm invested in the verse. I'm also invested in trying to see what other people are doing, younger, older, and I see that Romeo has grown, Romeo has evolved, and Romeo has come to understand that there has to be balance between home and abroad. Given the fact that he's in the diaspora, his new book talks about home, talks about abroad, talks about the lived life of younger people, within two constructs, within the constructs of sexuality on one side, and within the constructs of social reality on the other. So Romeo is a prolific poet. The fifth one, I would like to give it to a poet called Jumoke Verissimo. Jumoke Verissimo is Jumoke Verissimo. Should I spell? Jum. Huh? Hello.
Please repeat again.
Jumoke. Jumoke. Verissimo. Verissimo.
Verissimo. Okay, it's a very Portuguese name.
So Jumoke Verissimo is a poet she's actually Afro-Brazilian. By the surname, you should know that she's Afro-Brazilian from Lagos. But most importantly, she's a poet whose work is powerfully feminist, powerfully womanist, and one cannot displace the reality of the mother, the daughter, the sister, the prostitute on the streets, the politics of gender cannot be put aside. But for me, beyond the politics of the gender, because it will be foolhardy to just to elevate someone based on gender construct alone. one must show that beyond your gender construct, you have what it takes to deploy metaphors, to deploy, you know, the nuances, the figuratives, you know, and
Femi? Por enquanto que
you also have the...
Ok. Femi?
Hello?
Femi? Hello? Yes. Okay.
Okay, so
Now,
Jumoke
okay.
Verissimo is...
Now it's not okay. Então, só fazer um pouco a tradução do que ele está falando. Então, por exemplo, ele falou do Tadei Padeolo, né? E o principal livro dele é o Testamento de Saara, Sahara Testament, né? Que é um livro que fala sobre a história e o povo do Saara, né? E é uma poesia que possui uma cadência e fala sobre as questões da natureza. O segundo poeta que ele está falando... the second poet is a psychiatrist, is that right?
Yes, he's a psychiatrist.
What's his name?
Niran Okewole.
Niran Okewole.
Niran Okewole.
Okewole. Aí eu translate.
Yeah.
Então, ele é um poeta do norte da Nigéria, né? Ele é um poeta e artista. Né? How many books he published?
Niran has 3 books. Niran has 3 books. Yeah, one of his work is play, Logarithm. Yeah.
O segundo, the third is Abuka Cassili, no?
Abuba Cassidi, yeah.
Abuba Cassili é um poeta que publicou 2 livros e ele fala sobre a questão do sufismo, né? E ele mistura essa questão da política social com misticismo sufista, né? O terceiro poeta, o Manadi, is that right?
Amu Nnadi.
Amu Umanadi.
AMU, then NNADI.
Ok.
Yeah.
Então, ele é um poeta que foi indicado para o prêmio nigeriano, né? O Nigerian Prize of Literature, que é o prêmio mais importante da Nigéria. E ele é muito influenciado pelo Pablo Neruda, né? Então, ele escreve uma poesia erótica e também amorosa. The other poetry is Run Oyo. I don't remember the name. Can you repeat for me, Femi, please?
Romeo in Shakespeare.
Yes, Romeo.
Yeah.
Yes, the Romeo.
Oriogun.
Romeo.
Oriogun. Oriogun. Romeo Oriogun. Yeah.
Oriogun. Então, ele é um poeta que vive nos Estados Unidos, né? E ele ensina escrita criativa. E ele é um poeta político também, só que ele trabalha a questão do transgênero, né? E a questão da diáspora. Então, a realidade homossexual dentro da diáspora africana, né? E ele é muito ligado à questão da literatura norte-americana. E o último, que eu acho que é interessante, it's Verissimo. What's his first name? I forgot.
Jumoke
Verissimo.
Yes.
Jumoke Verissimo. Então, ele é um poeta, na verdade, ele trabalha com a questão afro-brasileira em Lagos, né? E ele é um feminista humanista também. Então, ele fala muito da realidade das mulheres e das ruas de Lagos, né? E então a poesia dele possui uma nuance muito grande na linguagem e também tem a questão política muito forte. Okay, let's read the poems now to finish our live, okay? Okay, Femi, are you okay? Femi, are you still there? Marta? Teu microfone está desligado, Marta.
Okay. Should I read whatever comes to mind or...
Ler o poema de novo?
A gente vai ler os poemas e vai finalizar, tá bom?
Certo, tá bem.
Prefer... Hello? Hello?
Are you okay, Femi? Everything is okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let's listen. Let's read the listening, the poem listening first, okay, again. And then I will tell you the poems that I've translated, and then you read English and I will read in Portuguese,
okay? Okay.
Então,
so listen first before we read all that poem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start you first.
Okay.
English.
I realized that Samuel likes that poem, and you're not the only one who's fascinated by that poem. Like, okay.
First poem.
I'm actually just opening the pages, so just give me some time.
Okay.
Pages,
Page 36, no?
Yeah, I'm there.
Página 36.
Listen to the voice of the clouds that streaming echo, pregnant, swayed by the winds. Listen to the
Femi, I think that we can't hear you because I think that's an internet connection problem.
Okay, I'll start again.
Okay. Please start again. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Listen to the voice of the clouds that streaming echo, pregnant, swayed by the winds. Listen to the bleating of goats, satisfied with their fates, anxious not of fraught natures. Listen to temperate trees fondled by the wind, firm in the sun, housing the insects in their growing, mending their wounds by the silence of time. Listen and try to forget about yourself. You are nothing. Your voice is a privilege lost on you. Your tact is practical. You will never be calm. Your wounds will memorize the incident. You will be thankful for life on living.
Okay,
Did you hear me?
now I read the translation.
Yeah.
Escute, para a voz das nuvens, que emana eco, grávida, balançou pelo vento. Escute as balidas cabras, satisfeitas com seus destinos, sem agonias com a natureza plena. Escute as árvores sóbrias, acariciadas pelo vento, firmes no sol, acolhendo os insetos e seus ventres, remoendo suas feridas pelo silêncio. Escute e tentar esquecer de ti mesmo. Você é nada. Tua voz é um privilégio perdido em ti. Teu tato é rumor, nunca te acalmarás. Tuas feridas guardam o incidente. Você é nada. Tua voz é um privilégio perdido em ti. Teu tato é rumor, nunca te acalmarás. Tuas feridas guardam o incidente. Será grato pela vida. Ázimo, obstinado entre os ventos. Very good. Now, the other poem is, let's see, Memories Have a Tendency to Ripen. It's page 22. I think that Femi has some connection problems. Are you listening, my friend? Are you listening now? Are you listening now?
Yeah.
Okay. Read the
Memories.
Poem. Okay.
Memories have a tendency to ripen or to turn bad. It is the natural order of things. They are fruit things that shade us from the scorching sun.
Em português. Memórias tendem a amadurecer, ou ruim tornam-se. É a ordem natural das coisas. São coisas frutas, que sombrem-nos do sol ressequido. Good. Now the poem Go Slow. O poema vá devagar em português. Okay, but first in English. Your microphone is mute. It's turning off. You need to turn on the microphone, Femi.
Go slow is on page.
It's
I'm
the
using
page
digital.
13. Page 13.
Okay,
Página
I
13.
found it. Found it. 13. 13. Yeah. Go slow. Put your soft, trembling foam into your eyes. The silence of grumbling bosses in a long wait of passage. Muse in the earlobes. Amuse yourself with parental abuse. Presage, peer, and stretch your eyes into the marks where yellow bosses look like paints of paintbrush, where the white unilag bosses and the journey of Abraham stage a coup. Go slow. Like protests barricaded by smoke, even the walls feel their ghostly presence. Go slow. Simple ropes taut at uneven edges by law.
Cortou mais uma vez. Femi, you are freeze now. Let's wait.
Hello?
Now it's okay. Now it's okay. You stop it in the go slow, simple ropes. Não entendi.
Okay. So let me start from go slow. Like protests barricaded by smoke, even the walls feel like ghostly presence. Go slow. Simple ropes taut at uneven edges by lorries of hurrying insanities. And UBA stands empty, vomiting its human contents. And the banks close the markets, and the schools of young no futures strung out in the morn, bouncing back like postcards in a chain of suspected expired drugs. Poetry is nonsense. Poetry is sense. Poetry is parameters of words, perimeter, and words link, like long lines of multicolored vehicles. Go slow. The destination is near. Pay homage to the god of potholes. Hello? I can't hear you, Samuel.
I can't
Yes.
hear you.
Oh, so you freeze in go slow. The destination is near. Continue.
Okay. Go slow. Go slow. The destination is near, but pay homage to the god of potholes that make you shake like ping pongs, that make you jerk like after sequences of sex.
Ok.
Ok?
Vá devagar.
Vá devagar.
Coloque uma espuma leve em
Coloque uma
teus
espuma
olhos,
leve em
no
teus
silêncio
olhos.
do ronco do
No silêncio
ônibus,
do
na longa
ronco do
espera,
ônibus,
na
na longa
passagem.
espera, na
Contempla
passagem.
os lóbulos,
Contempla os lóbulos.
distraindo-se com o excesso comestível das fachadas. Presságio, dilata os olhos e espia. As marcas, onde os ônibus amarelos parecem paletas de tintas de pincel, onde os ônibus brancos da Unilag e seu itinerário na estação Abraham, um baque. Vá devagar. Como os protestos bloqueados pela fumaça, até mesmo os muros com suas presenças fantasmagóricas. Vá devagar. Simples cordas irregulares e esticadas até as pontas. Rapidamente passam loucuras entre os caminhões. E o ponto Uba, vazio, vômito de conteúdo humano. Os bancos fecham os mercados e as escolas dos jovens sem futuro. É a multidão ao amanhecer. Recupera-se logo. Como os suspeitos cartões postais com drogas inspiradas. Poesia é sem sentido. Poesia é sensação cena. Poesia é parâmetro de palavras. Grito, metro e associação de palavras, como a longa fila de veículos multicores. Vá devagar. O destino está próximo, mas venera o Deus dos buracos, que te chacoalha como ping-pong, que te faz estremecer como após as sequências de sexo. Very good, very good. And then the last poem, because we don't have much time. Let's see, the reincarnate company. I think that which page is it? I need you to remember now.
The reincarnate.
Yes, just a minute. That I need to check.
Reincarnate,
Yes.
right?
Yes, the reincarnate company. It's the poem 31.
Okay.
Último poema.
31.
Yeah. The reincarnate company. Let's see. I'm now.
You sure it's 31?
Yes, it's the page 47.
I thought
The
so
page
much.
47.
Okay. 47.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please, yeah, you can read the poem.
Okay. So,
You can read the poem.
the country has lost her medicine. She drives her being into foreign ties, cocooned for respite. The country's sore leg sits like an amputee, the only knowing. Is the cackle of different tongues and a jihad march past, a hurricane of dust in the marketplace. This country, a Robin Crusoe's vast land, a wrestle for the control of the barn, man-eaters in government, palliatives in parliament. The sea distances the isle of heaven. The country is an elephant. Dead on arrival, meat is shared on the outskirts of town. This country, the country, births hope when the
Femi, you are freezing again. Congelou novamente. Vamos esperar um pouco. Femi, are you there?
So I'm starting from the second verse.
Yes, please.
Which says,
Yes, please.
the country bats hope when the marauder rides a fierce horse. She crawls. This reincarnate country is breathing fine with a gas mask and delightsome doses of experimental drug. Her pale skin glows, but she needs reconstruction. Man-eaters are learning edible leaves. The galloping horse broke its leg last week. It was told by transfers in a single account. This country, baby steps, photographs of unrestrained laughter. The jihad is not over, but the voices are sunk in quicksand. We can only find the clothing, mementos of memory, bathing near the Niger. Over to you, Samuel.
Now em português. Este país reencarnado. O país perdeu sua medicina e conduz suas existências por coxas estrangeiras, encasulada no cansaço. As pernas doloridas do país. Senta como uma amputada. O que se sabe é que cacareja em diferentes línguas. E no desfile da jihad, um furacão de pó no mercado. Este país é a terra devastada de Robinson Crusoe. A luta pelo controle dos celeiros. Homens comedores no governo, paliativos no parlamento, a distância para a ilha paradisíaca é o mar. O país é um elefante. Na hora exata, a carne é repartida nas periferias da cidade. Do país nasce a esperança. Quando o predador monta no cavalo à força, ele cambaleia. O país reencarnado respira bem com máscara de gás e se delicia com doses experimentais de drogas. Sua pele avermelha, mas ela precisa de reconstrução. Homens comedores estão apreendendo as folhas comestíveis. O cavalo galopante quebrou sua perna semana passada. Isso foi dito pela transferência de uma única conta. Este país, passos de bebê, fotografias de risos descontrolados. A jihad não acabou, mas as vozes só sobram em areia movediça. Nos encontraremos no vestuário, lembranças da memória, banhando-se perto do Níger. Femi, thank you so much. Muito obrigado. I loved our conversation. Amei nossa conversa. And that's it. Muito obrigado. Your microphone is...
Okay. My greetings to Vieira and the other friends of yours who have been able to put this together. My greetings, and I'm thankful to them. I'm hopeful that in due time we'll have dinner together physically. We'll have long chats without heartbreaks from two different post-colonial worlds. Most importantly, my second book, I can't call it my second book, my most recent book, The Year of Fire. I'm hoping to find a way to send a copy to you in Brazil so that we can do more, we can engage, and you can see whether you can tell me, give me feedback about my growth.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Então ele agradece muito, agradece a todos que compareceram aqui. E também ele fala que vai enviar o livro para mim. Enviará o livro para mim, O Ano do Fogo, The Year of Fire, e que um dia ele quer fazer um encontro presencial conosco para conversar mais, porque, além disso, tanto o Brasil quanto a Nigéria são dois mundos pós-coloniais, né? Thank you, Femi. Muito obrigado. Bye, bye.